And games have started, Aman.
Fantastic. We could talk about that flower vase all day, but we're here to talk about the chess and Magnus underway with the white pieces. So let's see how things start off, because you mentioned that the early games are going to be kind of important to see what these players are bringing to the table.
Yeah, and okay, interesting. Magnus, I was going to say refraining from going for an open Sicilian, but there we go. Pawns exchanged in the center now, and he drops back with his knight. So not quite a transposition to Maxim's favorite Najdorf, where there would be potentially a pawn on the a6 square. Instead, he's forced Maxim to commit a pawn in the center. Magnus now, I'm pretty sure, is going to bring his bishop out to this light square. And okay, a pawn structure that's very familiar to all Sicilian players. Aman, is this in your repertoire?
It's not in my repertoire, but the offbeat ideas like the move h3, just those small moves that you're pretty much playing a main opening, but you have these inclusions just to try to throw, like it's going to take something like that to throw an expert like Maxime off. And so I really enjoy playing chess in this kind of way lately. So I definitely have an appreciation for these small sidelines. And Magnus is just, as I said, trying to find any way to get Maxime thrown off in an opening that he knows so well.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you enjoy those types of moves. I do too. I think it's a symptom of age. No more
I
bishop
completely
c5
agree.
Nigels.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been saying that maybe like 10 years ago in my career. What is this h3 nonsense? But I have an appreciation for the subtleties there as Magnus is showing.
Yeah, and I think for everyone at home, a very standard Sicilian type of position, but the pawn to h3 move earlier kind of, he was just waiting, Magnus, for MVL here to show his hand what pawn structure he was going to go for and then decide how to set up his pieces. And now white jumping in with a knight into the center, beautiful square. This is always a key idea in this type of Sicilian, and you had to take with the bishop, not the knight, otherwise there would have been a fork. And okay, changing pawn structure, Aman, who do you think this is going to favor?
Offhand, I actually like it for Maxime. Obviously, the concession is just the bishop pair given up, but there's a really easy future to imagine where the f7 pawn makes it to f5 once the knight moves, and that's a pretty dangerous, control of the center, but even potential attack. And as I say that, the knight moves out of the way, perhaps hinting at that idea, as well as maybe the knight just repositioning.
Yeah, the knight could start hunting down this bishop at some point. Magnus retreats, potentially, if that happens. He creates a square there for the bishop to jump back to. Yeah, I must admit, I've tried to dodge open Sicilians my whole life because this type of pawn structure, I find it so hard to evaluate. It feels like it's just move by move. It feels like if you're in time with white, you might be fine. You might have an advantage on the queen side. Black, though, in the center, easy play. Two bishops, though, there's a lot of imbalance here.
Yeah, I will say that this is the type of position you can see the the eval bar, right? It's already enjoying white's position a little bit more, and so I would say that this is the type of position where a strong player is really going to handle it well, and I would say the average player as white here is just not going to do that well. The pawns look menacing; they're really tough to handle, but someone like Magnus and the players in this tournament, they just know how to handle the bishop pair so well.
Yeah, we saw that from Maxime in some key games yesterday. He both fought, but then later used the bishop pair to his advantage. I do worry about this black knight on the edge of the board.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why the computer's favoring white right now. If this knight were anywhere else on a better square, I'm not sure exactly where it should be, but then I would feel much more comfortable about black's position.
Yeah, that already kind of highlights it, that we're not even sure where it should be. If the knight goes to c4 and gets kicked out, it has to retreat to b6. And speaking of that, the queen goes to b6. I start to think about positions kind of like you're highlighting, where the knight just, doesn't really have a way to get into the game. And maybe a slow move like rook b1, defending the b pawn so that the bishop on c1 can move, would be what Magnus is going for. And it's a big red X on it.
Of course, that's always the way, right? Super logical move, but it's a miss. Maybe there was something else. I did for a second wonder whether like knight into d4, trying to get into some nice squares, taking advantage of the black bishop being loose was an idea. But okay, Magnus didn't want any fancy stuff. I don't think we can blame him there, right? It's still an advantage for white.
Exactly. Yeah, these are the kind of misses that you might see at this level, where a great move is played, but maybe an even better one was available. And that's often where strong players' radar might not be as sharp because the position's already good, so they're not really looking for something extravagant.
And Maxime making Magnus think. Very quiet move, I've got to say. Rook to f7. He's just defending his bishop, kind of keeping his options open. Not really sure the deeper idea behind it. But Magnus now has to decide what to do. I guess you could bring your bishop out, hit the queen, but the bishop might be a target on the e3 square later anyway for the black pawns. So he waits.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the real plan for black, because as you said, a lot of cagey moves like rook f7, queen b6, now queen back to c7. The knight on a5, sure, eventually it might show up on the c4 square, but it doesn't do that much from there, and it's very easy to kick out with the move like b3, and maybe the pawn goes to c4 afterwards. So you almost don't want to allow b3, c4 to be played. Leave the knight on a5 so that can't happen. But then, kind of wondering what the next moves are going to be. Expanding on the king side here, David, a typical attack almost looks more dangerous for black than it does for white with those bishops aimed.
Yeah, often you do want a kingside pawn storm when you have the pawn majority. Here, black has 4 versus 3 on the kind of right half of the board. But as you say, the bishops, especially the light squared bishop, the fact that that's staring in that direction makes it, wow. I was actually thinking when you said pushing the pawns forward, I was like, oh, g4, is that what you were going to suggest? And you were saying it for black, but look at this, Saman. He's going for it, Magnus himself with white.
Wow. I mean, in theory, in principle, the move is very satisfying, opening up that light squared bishop, but it's just one of those moves that you'd never really think of. And rook f8 has been played. I mean, can you blame him? It's getting a question mark here, but it seems to be the most natural move in the position.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us would play that in a heartbeat and feel very good about it. I wonder whether it's just, okay, there we go, Magnus. It's as simple as setting up a mate threat, and some calculation needs to be done. You need to see a mate after rook takes knight here. Ooh,
yeah, my pattern only tells me that queen h7 check, bishop g6, and bishop h5 is how white usually plays those positions. So if that is not working here, David, then I'm out of luck.
Yeah, this hasn't been played yet, Maxime's thinking, but bishop h5, the bar stays sky high, and this is happening, Aman.
Oh wow, my goodness.
Knight has been played. Magnus has a draw, we should mention. He can repeat moves by dropping back with his queen and checking, but it's a knockout if he finds bishop to g6 and just dropping back.
And Maxime just shook his head. He kind of like tapped himself on the head, like, what was I thinking? Because this is not something that you willingly walk into. First of all, when Magnus Carlsen hangs a piece, you got to be thinking he's got something planned. So Maxime now in a position where you can't go back, David. You're only going forward from here as the king marches up.
Yeah, he's trying to play king of the hill here. He's trying to get his king in the center of the board, but it's not going to work out. You can even drop your bishop back this way, maybe attack the rook and threaten queen back to g6 checkmate. This is just over. Like, we were talking about a complex middle game just a few moves ago, and he finds this move, bishop back, bishop h5. Maxime looks ready to resign, Aman.
I agree. This is a really tough position to be in. Also, bishop to d8. I mean, he's not even going to make a move. Yep, that is just over. What a shocking turn of